Coming to central limit theorem. So this was already covered by Shirish in last session. So I'll just give a recap of this. So central limit theorem is applicable for what is called a sampling distribution. A sampling distribution is like a distribution which is formed out of random samples from a particular population. So it's a distribution of a random variable corresponding to a function of some independent and identically distributed sequence. So this and all, you just need to know that there is something concept called IAD. So details, if you want to refer, you can refer Google and all. So this is like a concept that we will be using to define our central limit theorem. So central limit theorem, if you tell in simple terms, what it means that it is applicable to like IAD, independent and identically distributed sequences, IAD sequence with the finite mean and finite variance. So in that case, my central limit theorem tells me that if the number of samples denoted by n tend to infinity. So even though I tell infinity here, if n is greater than 30 in a particular problem, I can always approximate it using central limit theorem. So what it tells me that irrespective of the distribution of the population, let the population be following binomial, Poisson, exponential, normal, whatever be the distribution, irrespective of the distribution of the population, if my sample size is greater than 30, I can use the following 3 points to my sampling distribution. So one is that the sampling distribution of the mean can be approximated by a normal distribution. The mean of the sampling distribution is equal to mean of the population, and the standard deviation of sampling distribution is equal to standard error of population. So if we write it in mathematical terms, standard first thing sampling distribution of mean will be a normal. Okay, that we know. Mean of the sampling distribution. So let it be denoted by maybe x bar. So that will be equal to mu. So the difference between parameter and statistic and all we learned in previous classes. So if you see the statistic corresponding to mean will be equal to the population mean, which is denoted by mu. Similarly, the standard deviation of the sample distribution will be equal to what is called standard error, SC, which will be given my population standard deviation as sigma. It will be equal to sigma by root n, where n is the number of samples. So these 3 points are what is the outcome from the central limit theorem that we can make use of in our further discussions. So some 2-3 related points for this also we can see. One is which are the use cases corresponding to this. So which all cases I can apply my central limit theorem. So one, it tells me that for large samples, that is n greater than 30, normal distribution can be used to approximate the sampling distribution of mean. So that I know already from the wording of my central limit theorem. So second point is if the random samples actually come from normal distribution. So in that case, we saw that irrespective of the type of distribution of the population, central limit theorem is applicable. So now in this case, we are telling that if the samples actually come from the population, actual population is following a normal distribution, then we can apply this theorem irrespective of the sample size. That is, even if my sample size is less than 30, I can apply this standard error and mean conditions, provided my population is following a normal distribution. Now the next case is, in that case, earlier case that we considered, we told that to compute standard error, standard deviation of the population or sigma is known. So suppose there is a case where sigma is not known, then if it is n is greater than 30, we can always go for central limit theorem with the assumption that my sample, I can use a sample standard deviation for my computation. But if it is less than 30, that is, it is less than 30 and the population standard deviation sigma is not known, then in both those cases being true, I will go for what is called a T distribution. So we will come to details of that later when we solve problems. The T distribution is actually characterized by something called the degrees of freedom. That also I will tell when we come to that point. So in that case, for n samples, the degrees of freedom will be what is called n-1. And in that case, instead of sigma by root n that we saw in previous case, the standard error will be s by root n, whereas correspond to the sample standard deviation. And the other point, you just for academic sake, you just keep in mind. In all these cases, we are like considering infinite population. So in case of finite population, you are supposed to multiply standard error with some multiplier, but we will not be like using this much. So if you go to maybe fully academic setup, you may have to use this, but in our problems, we will not be making use of this much. And there are extensions to this for what is called a two population cases. That and all we will be covering in next week's session when we see hypothesis testing. Today we will consider these simple cases where n greater than 30, like normal distribution with sample size less than 30, then maybe T distribution, 2-3 examples where standard deviation is not known and the sample size is less than 30. So there are some 2-3 examples correspond to all these we can see. Now this was covered yesterday in some detail by Rashmi. I will just highlight. So basically inferential statistics, from the term, what is important is the infer part. So basically what we are trying to do in the inferential statistics is we are inferring insights about the population with what I am having in hand is the sample data. So suppose my population is like 10,000 and my sample is like 100 points out of this population of 10,000. So with the 100 points of sample data that I have in hand, I am trying to estimate or infer insights about the population, which is actually of size 10,000. So that is what we try to do in inferential statistics. So there are different types of areas in this called non-parametric and parametric. So we will be dealing with parametric. So in parametric, we have two cases, hypothesis testing and estimation. So hypothesis testing basics we saw in yesterday's session, and next week we will be seeing at the more complex cases of that. Today we will be seeing basically what is called an estimation, which is a type of parametric test and which falls under inferential statistics. So what is estimation? So estimation, from the name itself, it is very clear. It's the process of estimating. So what we are estimating? So we are estimating a population parameter from the population statistics. So given some statistics for a sample out of for this 100 points, I am trying to estimate something for this 10,000 points. So that is what I do in estimation. So estimation is again of two types, point estimation and interval estimation. A point estimation means that I am estimating a single value for a population parameter, that I tell that the population mean is this value A or B, or the population variance is C. So like that I am fixing on a particular value. So that is actually very complex, right? So to be able to tell with 100% confidence that the mean of this value is particularly this. So for that actually some advanced methods are there, like method of moments, maximum likelihood estimation and all. So that and all are slightly advanced things. So that I think when we go to next semester and all machine learning courses, we'll be covering those. So this session we will be limiting our discussion to maybe a simpler case out of this called the interval estimation. So what is an interval? So as we know, interval is something that lies between 2 points, right? An interval of two numbers or something. So if I see something like a normal distribution, so what I define by an interval is I want to define some values A and B within which something happens, within which is my area of interest. Or in some other cases, what my acceptance region is what is limited by A and B, and whatever is outside that I will call as my rejection region. So for cases like that, I will make use of what is called interval estimation. So as it is defined by two numbers, in this case A and B, so within which I will try to tell that a population parameter will lie. So given my sample data of 100 points, I will try to estimate some interval A and B, and I will tell that for the population of 10,000 people, within some relative degree of error, my value will lie between the interval A and B. So that is what is my aim when I go for interval estimation. So now, as I told, something that does an estimation is called an estimator, right? So the statistic that we are doing using to like for this estimation purpose is called a estimator. So an estimator should have some properties. One is that it should not be biased. So like when we saw the coin toss example and all, we saw that an unbiased coin will have a probability 1/2 for head or tail. But whereas if I make some change to it with some weight focus towards one side and all, I can actually change the fairness of the coin and I can actually make it biased so that the probability of head and tail will no longer be half. So in our case, our good estimator should be unbiased, which means that expected value of the estimator should approach the population parameter. And second property is that it should be efficient. So out of all my estimates, the one having the smallest variance will be the best estimator that I will be having. And third thing is called sufficient. So this property means that given some sample of 100 data, in arriving at my estimator or estimate, I have to use the information available from all the 100 samples. So I should not like use maybe 80 samples out of this or 10 samples out of this. If I am making use of all the 100 samples available, then it is called a sufficient property of an estimator. Then what is called consistent? So consistent means that as I increase the sample size n, so as n goes up, my estimate should move more and more closer to the actual population parameter. So here suppose my sample data is n and I got some value. So let's say this is my population parameter, and for my sample data n of 100 I got this interval. Now suppose I increase my sample size to 1000, then my estimate should actually become better. So that is what is meant by consistent. If I go on increasing my sample size, my interval will become shorter and shorter and I will be getting a better estimate. So these are the 4 properties of a good estimator. So now we will define some terms related to interval estimation, and then we will directly go to problems of how we can find out that. So before that, any doubts?